4. So as I look at this one, you have to be really careful about the operations that it's asking you to do, right? So here, when I'm subtracting, I'm only subtracting this one. I'm not subtracting the one that follows it. So as I gather up my like terms, make sure you watch that sign in the middle. So I gather my whole numbers first. So I've got this 14, but it's not really 14, it's negative 14, right? So negative 14 and 5 gives me what? Negative 9. Thank you. Now I need to deal with my i's, right? I've got 6i. Now look at this sign. Minus negative 1i plus negative 3i. All right, look what I got. I got 6i minus negative I, right? Plus negative 3i. Do you see what? Now, if you're a same change kind of person, I tend to do this sometimes with these. Oh, that color. Can you see that color? Now you can just gather your like terms. You change everything in the parentheses past the subtraction sign. Other questions about your homework? 20. Flip it over to number 20. All right, so what's the problem with 20? There's an imaginary in the bottom, and if it's imaginary in the bottom, that means there's a radical in the bottom, and we can't have radicals in the bottom, right? So to get rid of it, because it's a complex number, I'm going to multiply the top and the bottom by what? The conjugate, which is not minus, but that's right. Do I change the first sign also? No, it's only the middle sign. So 2 plus 4i. Now it becomes a FOIL or a distribute situation in the top and the bottom. So I've got 2 plus 8i plus 16i. What's 8i times 4i? 32i squared. What? Where? Oh, you're right. Thank you. That's right. We do. Then on the bottom, 4 change all the I squareds. That becomes, I'm loving this color scheme so much. Do y'all like it too?
I actually have a problem.
Yeah. 2 and negative 32 gives me negative 30 plus 20i. That's right. What's on the bottom? Now, you might not realize this because I didn't really go into this. But because every single thing is divisible by 10, I could actually simplify this a little bit. How do you think it might simplify? So smart, Finley. Yeah. Perfect. I don't know what that means, but hush. Okay, other questions about your homework?
I'm gonna get kind of like psyched out. Looks like 8.
All right, what else in your homework?
I got a question about it.
What?
I can Wix or cornrows.
The square. Okay, before we complete the square, this, in my opinion, is the hardest thing we do in this unit. Now, I say that, and some of y'all are going to go, what? That's not even hard. So I'm going to move very slowly through this, okay?
Go yeah.
I think that's only what it says. You know what I'm saying?
All right, before,
Like, I don't know why someone would ask you for the answers that like you're gonna tell them. Like, that's just.
dude, you should have some time. It's not going to take.
I hate concepts.
Okay,
Don't concepts.
completing the square. This is the time. Remember I told you you didn't have to know what a perfect square trinomial was before, but there would come a time when you'd have to know it. We're there. Okay, perfect square trinomial. That's where the ends are perfect squares. And so I'm just going to come down here and do a little PST refresher. The ends are perfect squares. What else has to happen for a perfect square trinomial? Okay, so it has the square dance, right? The square roots of the ends multiplied and double have to give you what's in the middle. There's one more stipulation. Second sign, oh, positive, that's right. The first sign could be plus or minus, and if this is true, then it factors as the square root of the first sign, and the square root of the second squared. Okay? Is it hard to see the board from back there? Because Calculus said that table's impossible to see the board from. If that's any better. What? Can everybody over here still see if I can count it like that? Is that better? Okay. Now, when you factor a perfect square trinomial, right, it comes out looking something like, let me, color would show good. Yellow. It comes out looking something like this, maybe, right? Or there could be a coefficient in front of the x, but something along those lines. So here's the thought process we're going through. If I have this equation, and this is kind of what we already did even on your quiz just now, and this equals some value, this is an easy solve. Do you agree? What would I do first to solve it? Square root it, right? The square root cancels out the squared. I end up with x plus 3 equals plus or minus the square root of 5. Oh my gosh, and then you see what you did wrong on the quiz.
Yeah, I got a bad grade on that.
Whoa. Wait, so this was more than 10?
Miss McGee, guess what I did?
Wait, so then that's not fair.
Spoiled it out.
I did x plus 3, then x plus 3.
You probably were not the only one.
Oh, wait, I did this right. Never mind.
I don't remember being a question like that.
Ha! Finley.
I think you secretly gave Finley an easy test.
I did. He's my favorite. He's my favorite, so he gets the easiest one. Well, he got the hardest one. All right. So the point that I'm trying to get to here is that if it's set up this way, it's a much easier solve. Because what are the ways we've talked about? Grayson, name one way we've talked about to solve a quadratic.
If there's an exponent, you have to put the square root on it.
Okay, so solving with square roots. Name another way.
Complex numbers.
They might have complex numbers. Name another method, though, that we use to solve. factor and solve. We might factor and solve if it's factorable. What's another method we've talked about to solve quadratic? So that's what we use when we factor. It's a zero product operator. That's what he said. Yep, square root's the first one. Graphing is the other. Perfect. Graphing is the other, right? So all these are ways that we're solving these quadratics. So if I had this equation, right, that was plus 9, that looked like this, and I asked you to solve that for x, right? You would probably first go, okay, can I factor it? Can you factor it? What multiplies to 4 but adds to 6? Nothing. Nothing does, right? So that's off the table to start with. I can't factor and solve that. My only, what? No, I'm telling you why we're going to complete the square.
And I want to know why we're going to use it.
Some of us won't, Grayson. Some of us won't. Okay.
Say it again. Am I going to need to know how we would do it?
Would you agree this is the same equation?
What's the one below it?
It's just a slip of my pen. This is actually the same equation. If I FOIL this out, I would get x squared plus 6x plus 9, and then I move the 5 over. But the point is that I could solve this with radicals. So here's what we're going to do. Here's what completing the square does. Completing the square takes an equation like this and allows us to rewrite it like this so that we can solve it easily. Okay? Now, with that said, you got to remember those PSTs, right? Those perfect square trinomials. So I want you to think with me for just a minute. What would need to go? No, I slid over.
Did you say those are the same thing, so essentially that's all you do?
I haven't showed you what to do yet.
I don't want to know. Say I get into a car wreck, and the cop comes to me. I'm looking at
Those are just examples.
Let me not do it like this. Let me do it. Yeah. Yes. If I needed this to be a perfect square trinomial, what would need to be, what value would I need to put on the end? If this is going to be a perfect square trinomial.
It's a regular number. Like, did you put 36 or I remember that?
I haven't heard it yet.
Pick a number, any number.
It's not 5, it's not 9. Somebody just said it. I don't know who it was. Why is it 25? It's squared, right? It has to be squared on the end. Does it now square dance? Yes, x times 5, 5x doubled is 10x. This is going to be the key to completing the square, is being able to find that boundary. Okay. All right. It's the square root of the first. The square root of the first times the square root of the last. Right? Because the middle's got to be 2ab. Right. Right. What? Going back to my yellow, I like it a little better. Okay.
Don't let my mom. Very bad. Quarterback.
That means you don't have 63.
We're going to use this as our example to start with. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to try to write you some steps through here as we go, okay? Now, the first thing I need to do is I need to look to see is it a PST already? If it is, factor, solve, and stop. A perfect square trinomial. Is this a perfect, because the ends are perfect squares, the second sign's a plus, does it square dance, Grayson? Does it square dance?
I don't know what that means.
What's the square root of the first one? X. What's the square root of the last one? If you multiply those together, you get what? 1x, double it. 2x, is that what's in the middle? No, so it does not square dance. Square root of the first one.
And you put them together, and then you multiply by 2.
Yes.
And if it equals the middle number,
Yes.
it's what? It's square dance.
It's square dance.
What's the square dance?
That means I can factor it like this.
Oh, it just goes back to that.
Right. Okay.
Yes, I do. I can tell everybody what they
So, I'm going to put a step 2 on here because this may come into play and it may not. But if you have a leading coefficient, and if I put LC, if you need to put leading coefficient in your notes because you know you won't remember what LC means, then do it. If my third block always says, do I have to write that or do I have, it's your notes, so whatever you need to remember. If leading coefficient is there, yeah. This is a lot I'm writing, and I'm going to tell you about it. So as y'all copy it, let me talk you through it. If there is a leading coefficient, I am going to divide every single thing, every single place in this equation by that leading coefficient. If it gives me a fraction, then I'm going to leave the fraction in there, okay? In this case, I don't have one, and don't write this, but I'm just going to say, if I had a 2 here, right? Then I would divide, let me do it in a different color so you see. I would divide every single thing by 2. The first one, yep. 0 divided by 2 is still just 0, and I would leave it there, okay? If it was like 2, then it would be 1. So every single thing, every single place gets divided by the leading coefficient. You cannot complete the square with a leading coefficient, okay? Now, if it's just x squared, but if there's a number in front of x squared, before you start, divide everything by it. And then we'll start and pick up with step 3. No. What did I just say? Let's say there was a 2 in front here. I would divide everything by that 2. Right. So it would be x squared minus 3x plus 1/2 equals 0 over 2, but 0 over 2 is just 0. But just to show you that you do divide that part too.
But that don't work though.
We haven't, right, we're not to that point yet though, but wait. All right. So I'm at the pink step down here, right? I've divided, I don't have a leading coefficient. I know it's not a perfect square trinomial. I'm going to make it be a perfect square trinomial. So the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to call it a bad C. Why might I call that C? What is C, first of all, in this equation? The third number, it's the 1, right? Why am I calling it a bad C? It's not, it doesn't square answer. It doesn't make it a perfect square trinomial. So I'm going to move it. Now, when I move it, it goes over here, yes? But I can't just put 1 minus 1 because I got to subtract it from both sides. Now, when you do that, it's leaving a hole in my equation. Leave that hole there. Just give me a new battery. He said it'd last me all day. That was a story. Okay. When you move it, make sure you leave a blank here because it left a hole. But I'm also going to put a blank on the other side as well because whatever I fill that blank with, since it's an equation and I have to keep it balanced, I'm going to put it on the other side also because that the good C I'm fixing to find, I'm going to throw it to both sides. Okay, so watch what happens. I need to find the number that makes my equation square dance. 9. Tell me what you're doing. You're doing it in your head, but tell me what you're doing.
9 square root of 3. 3 times 1.
So go backwards. If you just started with the B, how would you find it? Give me a little equation. Who's saying that? I can't even tell who's talking. 1/2. No. Okay, but give it to me in general terms. Okay, you're very close, but you're thinking in terms of the vertex of a. But you're very, very close.
We have homework.
Where are you? Yes. This is completing the square. No, don't think so. You're doing it in your head. You're just not able to convey to me what it is you're doing. Okay, you are not doing it. All right. My good C here. My good C is going to be half of the middle number squared. Whatever's in the middle, take it half of it and square it. Right? Right.
Why are we? You know someone who uses algebra in their daily life. You don't do that like I don't have to take it.
You all knew this was 9 before I gave you the equation.
Then why do we have to do all this?
Because what if it's not a nice even number? What if that was a 3 in the middle? What would you need to complete the square? What would you need?
1.5.
You have a question? Somebody over here had their hand up.
Yeah,
2.25.
All right. Now, this is why we do all this. Remember in the very beginning it was, how are we going to solve this yellow equation right here? And we couldn't factor it, and it's messy to try to graph and look at. So we completed the square. So now what we want to do is we want to factor So look at the left side of the equation. How does that factor? This is now a perfect square trinomial. How does it factor? Close. What is -1 and 9? Can you solve that equation? better. That was from our radicals lesson. Sweet baby Jesus. What are you talking about?
Square root of
What is the square root of 8?
4 and 2.
Okay, so plus or minus. So I've got x minus 3 equals plus or minus. I heard 4 and 2, which would be 2 root 2. Okay. And now I add the 3 to both sides.
5.
No, you can't combine those because they're not, because this one's got a radical hook to it, so you can't combine it. It doesn't matter as long as the plus or minus stays in front of the 2 root 2.
I say we just don't count the half
All right. All right. First step, what do I do?
So if you
See if it's already a perfect square trinomial, because that would solve my whole problem. If not, because 56 is not a perfect. That's right. It doesn't have. Oh, it's a bad C. Do we all agree? But bad, right? Why would I, right? All right. Next check is leading coefficient. I don't have one, so I'm easy peasy so far. Yes. All right. Tell me what to do first. I got to move the bad C, right? I got to get rid of this guy because I need to put somebody in his place that's going to make it there. Yes? All right. So x squared minus 18x. I'm going to hold a place here. I'm going to move this over, but I'm going to hold a place here as well. Almost there.
It's 81.
It's 81. How'd you get that, Will? Tell
Square root
them.
of 81. Well, I mean, I could go long with it. 81 square root of 81 equals 9.
Okay, but you didn't start with 81. Based on what you started, half of b squared, right? You take half. Are you just randomly finding numbers and saying this is okay? I'm going to do a fraction with y'all next. And you'll see why that doesn't work. All right, half of 18 is 9, and 9 squared is?
9 squared.
Yes. Half the middle squared. Half the middle squared.
what's the oldest trick you've ever had in
Oh, Grayson, focus with me, buddy. Focus. It's like I'm pulling you. All right, factor the left side. Grayson, other Grayson. Factor the left side.
I'm saying for root. Negative 2 plus 9. What? How is that wrong?
Factor the left side. X minus 9 squared equals 25. Now solve it.
X minus 9 equals 5. 14. 14. X equals 14.
That's half the answer, Will.
Oh, plus minus. Wait, it's just.
Well, if I do 9 plus, no, you can't do that now. Listen to yourself say it. 9 plus or minus 5. 9 plus 5 is 14, or 9 minus 5 is 4.
That makes no sense. Because it's already at minus 9, so you gotta plus it to get it across the equal sign.
Yes, that's exactly what they are. That's exactly. Remember, do not lose sight of what we're finding. We are finding the x-intercepts.
Oh.
Yes. Where did my little pen just go?
I don't know. Here you go.
No, my little star. I can't keep going.
Infant Daddy.
Get out of here. Get out of here.
I don't get it. I need to stand up here with you.
Oh my gosh, you need a lot of things. I don't know that standing up here with me is going to get it for you.
No, you're funny. Wait, is this what you're going off of?
Yeah.
I don't get it.
All right, what should I do first? What'd you say?
Well, there's no
I'm
seat.
going to divide by 2. I'm going to divide everything by 2. I'm going to get rid of that leading coefficient. No matter what, I know I cannot complete the square with a leading coefficient. So I've got x squared.
8x.
I don't even have a c in here, right? That c is not even, I mean, I could put this over here and it'd be plus 15. The bad c has already been moved for me. So find the good one. What's the good one? 16. How did you get that so fast?
Because it's the half of the 8 square root, or squared, one of the two, and it equals 16. So 4 times 4 is 16.
How do you teach someone something you don't understand?
I don't understand. That's the only thing I understand.
All right. X minus 4 squared is how I factor.
Yeah, I'm gonna mess up on that part every single time.
That's where I did b over 2 squared. That's my good c. It was not, so that's why I had to put it on both sides.
I'm gonna go play some games. Do you have a pencil in your hand? What if I take it down?
You can't, okay, so you're right that it's plus or minus 1, but you can't add 4 to this 1. 5 is one of the answers, yes, but the other one is plus or minus 1. So, it's positive 1 plus 4, which is 5, or negative 1 plus 4, which is 3. You have to write that, because remember what I'm doing. Right, there's 2. There's 2. We never quit graphing.
So how do you end up making the one negative?
Plus or minus. That's literally what plus or minus means. Because the square root of 1 is positive or negative 1.
Literally not what I mean.
If it's a whole number like that, go ahead and simplify it.
On this one, how did we get x equals plus or minus 14? On this one, we couldn't get x plus
I
minus
didn't get plus or
5.
minus 14 on that one.
You wrote it down. Wait, can you explain how to get this?
Which one was
X
that
equals
one?
5.
Where do you see plus or minus 14?
I don't know, I just did it.
Look.
But like, so it's the original answer, but plus or minus, how'd you get 3? Oh, because minus.
Right. All right, one more. Stay with me.
Wait, we have a test, right? That's what test? Wait, is that the test that I could make my 5 out of 20 better? Yes? Or no? Is it? What? Is that the test that I can make my 5 out of 20 better?
Yes.
Hopefully. I bet you this grade would be worse than the 5 out of 20.
I'm aware what time it is. Thank you, though. Yeah, thank you.
She has been in life longer than you. She knows more.
Thank you, though. What are you doing first? I have x squared plus 3x plus 5 I hope some of you have seen the problem already, but if not, oh my gosh. Okay, 5, good or bad? Why? It's not even a perfect square. Okay, I'd appreciate if you're not packed up and ready to go because we are still having class. Don't complain about not understanding if you're going to pack up everything and not participate. All right, I'm going to move that because it's bad, okay? So I've got x squared plus 3x. I'm going to put a hole here. I'm going to move this, and I'm going to put a hole here. Yes? Nothing that, it's not an even number. Can you only take halves of even numbers? No. You can still do it. It's just going to be a what? A fraction. What if, okay, so I got 3 over 2, but I have to square it. What am I adding to both sides? What is it?
Did you just say 2.25 with 9 over 4 in your head?
Bro, y'all. 3 squared is 9. 2 squared is 4.
I think it's 2.25.
Leave it. Fractions are so much easier than the decimals. I'm telling you, when you learn to work with them, they are so much better. Now watch what happens. If you had this decimal up here, you'd be, what? You can, but it's going to be a lot harder. What goes here? I take the square root of the first, the square root of the last. What's the square root of 9 over 4? 3 halves. Look how much easier that is than if I had a decimal. And now over here. If you are not a fraction person, I'm sorry. Thank you, whoever said it. Negative 11 over 4. If I find a common denominator, I love fractions. If you haven't learned that about me, you'll learn it soon. I'm a fraction fanatic. All right, and all the steps stay the same. I intentionally threw you a hard one here, okay? I do have an I, and I wanted to make sure you saw one with an I, but look at how these beautiful properties of radicals pop back out in my answer. Okay, now let me tell you, let me talk to you just a second. This one was as hard as it gets. You had a leading coefficient as well as it was an odd number in the middle.